Here's a quote from Maya Angelou, a famous American poet. I've learned that every day you should reach out and touch someone. People love a warm hug or just a friendly pat on the back. As nurses, we learn and practice touch as a non verbal communicative technique in therapeutic communications with our patients. On the same token, let's examine how we can use touch to encourage patients to conform with their prescribed course of medication. Why is this important? Non-compliance or non-adherence to medication is a widespread recognized problem. The problem is associated with a waste of practitioners' time, a negative effect on patients' health, and, and an increase in relapses and therefore increases in healthcare costs. So the research article that I've selected is titled Improving Medical Adherence Using Practitioner Nonverbal Technique, a field experiment on the effect of touch. Let's preview my three main points of the research paper. My first point will be an introduction of the French professor who is the main author of the research paper. And, and following that, I will take a look at the study design. And finally, I will discuss the research findings. So let's move on to the first point. The main author, his name is Nicolas Guégan. He's a behavioral psychology professor at the University of Southern Brittany in France. He also has a website, and on his website he lists his recent research publications. They include titles like manipulation and psychology of manipulation and submission, consumer psychology, and even psychology of seduction. So back in 2010, when the paper was first published, there were no previous studies that tested the effect of touch on medical adherence. So in other words, this was uncharted territory, and Professor Guégan is the first researcher to publish on this topic. And from the second point, let's look at the study design. So let's look at what Professor Guégan and his team came up with. So they had 6 general practitioners that volunteered to be the toucher, and then patients that were suffering from mild pharyngitis were being recruited as the touchee. And at the end of the consultation, the general practitioner were instructed to touch or not touch the patients. The experimental group of patients were touched on the forearm for 1 to 2 seconds, and this is when the general practitioner is obtaining a verbal promise from the patients to take the antibiotic as prescribed. So this is what I envision happens in the doctor's office. And the doctor actually touches the patient on the forearm for 1 to 2 seconds while obtaining a verbal agreement with from the patient. And so conversely, for the control group, they had the same verbal agreement that was obtained by the practitioner, but the difference is that no touching was involved. So at the end of of 1 week, patients were contacted at home, and they determined the number of pills that had been taken. So what this means is at the lesser pills that they find at the end of the week, the more compliant the patients are with the medication. And lastly, we'll look at the research findings. The researcher found that a slight tactile contact displayed by the practitioner towards patients when requesting a verbal promise of compliance in the prescribed medication, it was associated with greater adherence than the same verbal request um, made without any tactile contact or touch. This means that the effect of touch is successful in encouraging the patients to perform a specific and an expected behavior in a medical context. So I wasn't able to find a very similar study, but I found a related study that was published in 2015 by Julia Salvillanto et al. And it's titled "Topography of Social Touching Depends on Emotional Bond Between Humans." So the study mapped out the body regions according to the areas of touch that's allowed in relation to the strength of emotional bonds between people. Let's move on to our conclusion. Let me review my three main points again. The first main point is that Professor Nicholas Gergen, he's the researcher that pioneered the study of touch in the medical context. And my main point number two, the study design uses touch or tactile contact as a non-verbal technique along with a verbal recommendation to take medication as prescribed. And the third point is touch was associated with an increase in medical adherence by patients, and this is in comparison to patients where no tactile contact or touch was made. So this brings me to my thesis statement that we can use touch to encourage patients to conform with their prescribed course of medication. And I'm going to leave you with a final thought. Let us put our hands together and, in the words of Maya Angelou, reach out and touch someone. Thank you.